Joining us live now from the Australian Financial Review is Matt Cranston. Matt, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Annalise.
Now, some interesting movements in some pretty key figures for the government, including unemployment.
Yeah, this week, so unemployment and wage price index, which, given what's happened with things like Holden and Jeans West all within the last month, I think people will be watching this very carefully. Unemployment, most of the economists think it's going to actually move back up from 5.1 to 5.2. And that wages will show no growth at all. So it's only about 2.2%, which is still pretty lacklustre.
And so far from the 4.5% they think that'll actually move wages. It's an interesting situation because if somehow we get unemployment with a 4 in front of it, well, normally people would say that's pretty good. But there's sort of a new test, right?
Exactly, and you're right in saying that they're a long way from that 4.5%, that golden moment where we do see wages start to build up again, and that triggers the consumer spending story and getting inflation back up. But if it does surprise again, and it has surprised in the last few months, the unemployment rate, and go back down, I think that will solidify the case for no rate cut. And I think financial markets haven't fully priced in a rate cut until October this year. However, if it does what economists think it will happen and go back up, I think that will obviously put even further pressure on the RBA, especially with things like coronavirus and bushfires, and you'll see interest rate pricing come forward a lot sooner.
Now, you mentioned coronavirus. That's a big discussion in the markets this week, in particular with we're getting a lot of company results at the moment, and what kind of impact it's going to have on our resources.
Absolutely. I just wrote something this morning. Sorry, not to plug my own story, but
that's what you're here for. Go for it.
The question was, should we be buying the commodities dip that has happened because of the coronavirus? So in China, you've seen iron ore because of the lockdown on manufacturing and the lockdown even on coal mining as well. In China, you've seen futures prices sort of go down for iron ore, but the coal price has actually come back up. I think 13% increase in thermal coal price in the last month.
Because I am a bit sceptical. I've seen a lot of anecdotal reports in China that none of the pollution's stopped, the smog's still there, and so they're saying, oh, no, we're all quarantined and we've all stopped doing everything.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And one of the Credit Suisse analysts was saying the other day their messaging about what's happening there is also part of their negotiating, knowing that the prices are going to be higher. So there's a lot of... it's really difficult. You ring a couple of the analysts and a couple of fund managers, and they're ultimately saying, well, we think it's probably better to buy in now. I mean, that's risky because you don't know how contained the coronavirus is, but what they're expecting is that the government is going to do the big third stage stimulus and really fire things up again, and that'll really create this boom back up in prices.
What's the explanation to what extent there's a slowdown or otherwise? I mean, presumably the extent of this spread, the amount of travel restrictions, we have to see a slowdown in economic activity in China, don't we? I mean,
yes.
How could it not?
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, they've closed the two major import ports, and they've also put on a quarantine for all the major areas which produce coal. And then but that, in a way, then creates this problem where, well, the natural supply of coal in China has been stopped. When you decrease the supply, given a reasonably steady rate in demand, then your price goes up. So it's all these things. But I was just talking to someone the other day, and I think the coronavirus effect on Australia will be very significant. They were just saying that they don't know what they're going to do with their property in Melbourne, because they were expecting a Chinese student to rent it at the beginning of the year. And that 3 weeks has just tipped them out of being able to come into the semester. And so I think University of Sydney postponed the start of... So you get all these complications, and you know, what are landlords going to do to fill the properties? Well, maybe they offer a cheaper rent for someone to steal someone else's tenant. So that's just one area. Then you've got tourism, then you've got all these other things. So.
And there'll be flow-on effects. All these Chinese students saying, well, I'm just not going to go to Australia or Canada next year.
So I'm still undecided about it, because I still think that some of the messaging in China might be a little bit not accurate. But at the same time, I just can't see how this is not going to have a really big effect.
I think you're being a bit kind there. I think they just lie. Like, just when it suits them.
I'm not allowed, I shouldn't say anything.
I will.
I'll be very careful.
Matt Cranston, thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.